Welcome to another episode of Case Number Zero. Tonight we'll be covering 3 disturbing cases of satanic cults. The facts are as follows, so sit back, relax, and always be afraid. Case number 1. 1981 to 1982, Chicago, Illinois. In a span of just 1 year, women in Chicago began disappearing. Not from dark alleys, not from dangerous neighborhoods, but from everyday places, near their homes, on their way to work, even while running simple errands. And when bodies were found, the scenes were so brutal, so grotesque, that police believed a sadistic serial killer was on the loose. But the truth was worse. There wasn't one killer. There were 4. A satanic cult operating out of a quiet suburban house, led by a man named Robin Gecht. Gecht didn't look like a monster. He was a husband, a father, a handyman. But behind closed doors, he demanded complete obedience from the young men who followed him, Edward and brothers Andrew and Thomas. Together they formed what investigators would later call the Ripper Crew. Their hideout wasn't some underground lair. It was a small bedroom, converted into a satanic chapel with black walls, red lighting, ritual objects, and a single makeshift altar. This is where Gecht performed his ceremonies. Ceremonies that required blood, pain, and sacrifice. The group was known for driving a red van, slowly cruising the streets at night hunting for victims. They targeted women who reminded Gecht of some twisted personal obsession. Once abducted, the victims were taken back to the house. What happened next is almost unspeakable. The Ripper Crew's attacks were fueled by a blend of sexual sadism and satanic ritual. Victims were tortured, brutally assaulted, mutilated in ways so disturbing that many details were never released to the public. One of their signature acts, cutting off the left breast of their victims, became the horrifying trademark of their rituals. These mutilations weren't random. Inside Gecht's satanic chapel was a box, an actual physical box, where he stored the severed breasts of the women they killed. The crew believed the mutilation was part of a dark ceremony, one that gave Gecht power and kept the group loyal. Investigators believe they may have abducted and killed as many as 18 women in the Chicago area, but the exact number may never be known. Some victims were found, others vanished without a trace. The reign of terror finally began to unravel when one woman, a survivor, did the impossible. She escaped. She'd been picked up by the red van after accepting a ride from what she thought were harmless men. Inside, she was attacked, stabbed, assaulted, left for dead. But through incredible strength, she crawled to safety and identified her attackers. That moment cracked the case wide open for investigators. One arrest led to another, confessions poured in, and the gruesome details, the rituals, the satanic chapel, all of it finally came to light. Robin Gecht, the cult leader, was shockingly never convicted of murder. He received 120 years for aggravated sexual assault and attempted murder, yet he continues to deny everything even today. Edward, Andrew, and Thomas faced harsher consequences. Death sentences, life sentences, some overturned, some reduced, but all tied forever to the horrors they helped commit. Even now, people debate how many victims the Ripper Crew truly had. How many families never got answers? How many women disappeared silently without ever being connected to the cult that hunted Chicago streets? This remains one of the most disturbing ritualistic murder cases in American history. A reminder that sometimes the darkest monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. They're walking among us, smiling, working, living normal lives, while also worshiping something far darker behind closed doors. This was the terrifying true story of the Ripper Crew, a satanic cult, a killing squad, and a nightmare that Chicago has never fully escaped. Case number 2. May 5th, 1993. West Memphis, Arkansas. In a small country town, 3 8-year-old boys went missing. Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. They were last seen riding bikes, laughing, and playing in the neighborhood. Just kids being kids. But by nightfall, they had vanished. The next day, searchers combed through the area known as Robin Hood Hills, a patch of woods behind the neighborhood. It was there, in a muddy drainage ditch, that the nightmare truly began. The boys' bodies were found submerged in water, naked, bound hand to foot with shoelaces. Their clothing had been stripped off and was discovered later, tangled and shoved into the mud. And the injuries? Bloody, complex, and brutal. This incident sent shockwaves through the community. In the early 1990s, America was so deep in the era of the Satanic Panic. Stories of cults, rituals, sacrifice, and dark ceremonies filled the nightly news, similar to our last story. And within hours, the people of West Memphis believed their nightmare was connected to Satanism. Into this storm stepped 3 teenagers. Damien Eccles, the dark-clothed, heavy metal listening outsider. Jason Baldwin, the quiet, intelligent, and fiercely loyal friend. And then there's Jesse Miskelly, a teenager with a low IQ, easily influenced, easily pressured, and easily frightened. They were misfits, outsiders, kids who didn't blend in with the church-going heart of West Memphis, Arkansas. And in a town gripped by fear, that was enough. Police zeroed in on Damien Eccles almost immediately, claiming he had an interest in the occult. He read horror books, he wore black clothes, he kept to himself, and soon, Jason and Jesse were pulled into the investigation as well. Then came the moment that sealed their fate. Jesse Miskelly's confession. A confession given after hours of interrogation, without a parent present, without a lawyer, and filled with contradictions, inaccuracies, and timelines that didn't match the crime scene. But in a town desperate for answers, it didn't matter. Fear drowned out reason. Rumors became facts. And the idea of a satanic ritual murder became the story that everyone believed. And the prosecution painted the boys' deaths as the work of a satanic cult. They claimed the injuries were ritualistic. They pointed to Damien's interests, books, drawings, music, and twisted them into evidence of evil. A case built on panic, not proof. In 1994, the verdicts came. Miskelly and Baldwin were sentenced to life in prison. Damien Eccles was sentenced to death. For years, questions grew louder. New experts re-examined the wounds and suggested that many injuries may have been caused by animals in the ditch, not knives and not rituals. DNA tests later found no genetic evidence linking any of the 3 teens to the crime. None. Documentaries, journalists, musicians, and thousands of supporters began to shine a spotlight on the case, exposing inconsistencies, flaws, and possible alternative suspects. The deeper people looked, the more disturbing the truth seemed. The West Memphis Three may not have been killers at all. but victims themselves. After nearly 2 decades behind bars, a legal twist called an Alford plea allowed the 3 men to walk free in 2011. They were released, but not exonerated. They had to plead guilty while maintaining innocence in exchange for freedom. But even today, this case remains unresolved. Who really killed the 3 boys in Robin Hood Hills? Why were innocent teens swept into a wave of fear and blamed for something so horrific? And will the real killer ever be found? The West Memphis Three case stands as one of the most chilling reminders of what happens when panic replaces logic, when fear becomes stronger than truth, and when a town's darkest night leads to justice gone horribly wrong. This is the haunting story of the West Memphis Three, a tragedy, a mystery, and a warning that sometimes the real horror isn't the monster hiding in the woods, but the one we created by our own fears. Case number 3. March 7th, 1989, U.S.-Mexico border. This terrifying true story begins when an American college student named Mark Kilroy vanished near the U.S.-Mexico border. Kilroy, a pre-med student from Texas, had been partying in Matamoros for spring break. Somewhere between the bars and the border, he disappeared. Just vanished into the night. For weeks his family searched. Police searched. Rumors grew, and eventually those rumors led investigators to a remote ranch called Santa Elena. What they found there was straight out of a nightmare. On that ranch lay shallow graves, dozens of them. Bodies dismembered, bodies missing organs, bodies cut in ways that matched dark ritual markings. There were blood-stained shackles, crude knives, and at the center of it all, the nganga, a cauldron used in ritual magic. But this cauldron wasn't filled with sacred sticks or symbolic offerings. It was filled with human remains, bones, blood, organs, and flesh harvested from the victims. Upon its discovery, investigators could hardly stomach the sight and smell of rotting organs floating in a soup of blood with vertebrae, animal parts, and bone fragments. This wasn't metaphorical evil. This was actual ritual murder. Mark Kilroy had been one of the victims. He had been tortured, his skull opened, his brain removed and offered as a sacrifice. This is the terrifying work of Adolfo Constanzo and his cult known as the Narcosatanists. From the outside, Constanzo looked like a charismatic, handsome man with charm and confidence. But behind that smile lived a self-proclaimed sorcerer, a man who believed he could summon power through blood, bones, and human sacrifice. In the 1980s, Mexico was drowning in cartel violence. Corruption ran deep, and dark superstition, was everywhere. Constanzo used this climate to his advantage. He claimed to practice Palo Mayombe, but what he created was no religion. It was a twisted mutation built on fear, domination, and ritual killing. He promised protection, he promised immunity from bullets, he promised success in trafficking, and the cartel members believed him. To his followers, Adolfo Constanzo wasn't just a leader. He was El Padrino, the Godfather, a man they believed held a supernatural power. The Narcosatanists kidnapped people off the streets, rival dealers, traffickers, sex workers, unlucky travelers, and even innocent bystanders. Victims were bound, tortured, mutilated, and sacrificed to feed the cauldron. The Narcosatanists believed that this would fuel Constanzo's supposed dark power. So when investigators were closing in, the cult didn't crumble right away. Constanzo fled to Mexico City with loyal followers. There, locked inside of an apartment, he performed rituals, demanded obedience, and waited for his next move. But when police surrounded the building in May of 1989, the Godfather, El Padrino, made one final demand. He ordered one of his own followers to shoot him, to kill him before he could be captured, and they obeyed. With Constanzo dead, the reign of the Narcosatanists finally came to an end, but questions lingered. How many victims were there truly? How many bodies were never found? How many people believed in his supposed magical power, to the point that they would kill for him? To this day, the ranch is remembered as a place of terror, a place where superstition, desperation, and brutality collided, a place where men believed a cult leader could make them bulletproof if they spilled enough blood. The story of Adolfo Constanzo and the Narcosatanists is more than just a tale of murder. It is a chilling reminder of how charisma can turn into control, and how belief can twist into madness, and how a single man claiming supernatural power can lead others into unthinkable darkness. This was the horrifying world of Adolfo Constanzo, a cult of blood, a cult of terror, a cult that fed on fear and left behind one of the most disturbing crime scenes in history. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to hear more stories about the occult, strange disappearances, or unsolved crimes, like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and always be afraid.